Everybody, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. Got another cool interview for you today. I got to sit down with Gary and Greg, a producer-director team. These guys have worked together in the past. Kind of different personalities and approaches, but I think they really complement each other when it comes to doing the work. It was a really fun interview. Their different takes on things and their different roles in getting the project done. Their newest movie, Open Your Eyes, is available now. We had an interview with the one of the lead actors already. Check that one out, Joanna Saul. And Barret is coming up probably tomorrow. So keep on the lookout. Open Your Eyes, available now. Enjoy the interview. Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I'm sitting down with Gary and Greg, who work together on a movie called Open Your Eyes, coming out June 1st. How you guys doing?
Great.
Good. How are you?
Good, doing good. Before we started recording, there's a little bit of tech issues, but I think we got them all solved, so that's awesome. I'm glad we're all here.
I'm to blame.
Sorry, didn't mean to throw you under the bus.
Hey, thanks for inviting us in.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad we all got together. It's always cool to. I talked to Joanna yesterday, so now it's cool to talk to you guys behind the camera, so we get different looks at the movie. Mm-hmm. But before we get into the movie, I always like to ask creative people to kind of go back to the beginning of their creative journey when you got into it. And Gary and I talked a little bit before we hit record. So sorry, Gary, I'm going to have to ask you to rehash a little bit of that because you guys have known each other for a while.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can start, Greg. So Greg and I have known each other for like 20 years, and he's a really talented guy, and so he's a writer, director, editor. He's a man. If you stacked up all the hats on top of his head, you'd have like 3 yards of hats up there. So yeah,
not by choice. Not by choice.
Not by choice.
Out of necessity.
Yeah.
Yes, out of necessity.
Yeah. So maybe Greg, to talk about how you came up with the idea.
Oh yeah. So basically, yeah, how me and Gary met. That's a funny story because. When I first moved to London, Ontario, Canada, where we're based, I was going to pursue my filmmaking career, and I should learn. So I never went to film school, so I should learn get some practical experience on sets. So I went through the Yellow Pages, if anybody remembers that, and I found Eyeline Cinematography, and so I called it up, and asked the gentleman, which was Gary, on the phone. I got a project I'm working on and wondering if I could sit down and just pick your brain, and met over coffee. And that's kind of how this whole thing started. So.
Wow. That's a smart move. You didn't do film school, but you wanted to be in movies. So you found somebody who you could just get the information from. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it started out not as, hey, can I come and work for you, but more, hey, can we sit down and I can ask you some questions?
Well, actually, that's what I said. I'll volunteer for you. So he was doing a bunch of corporate shoots. So I think I volunteered twice. And then he started handing me checks, which was very nice. So I think I earned my keep. And then, so I knew what I wanted to do when I was 7 years old. So I've been studying this forever. Took photography, because I couldn't afford film school. So I went to St. Clair College for, beginners and advanced photography. And that's kind of, I knew it applied. So, so that's kind of my journey.
Oh, that's cool.
Journey.
Gary, how did you get started? Before Greg met you, you were already working in the industry. So how did you get your start?
I ended up going to college for radio, television arts, and then worked my way through small TV stations. Ended up shooting news. I shot news for about 6-7 years, and then moved into documentaries for television. And then I went freelance in 1990, and I've been basically doing just a wide variety of different things ever since. And Greg and I, this is our 4th movie that we've worked on together, and commercials and a wide variety of things. So variety is the spice of life, really.
Right, definitely. It keeps anything from getting stale. Yeah. So it's your 4th movie together. Were they all kind of in a similar genre, or you're, again, variety?
No, as everybody, most filmmakers starting out, the safe bet is horror. I am a fan of horror, but, I have other genres I want to explore. This is kind of the first thriller, /horror/ love story / it falls under many genres, but it's, we did 2 horrors and I think a sci-fi, but at the end, like, I like smart horror. We try to focus on story because we know we're not going to have the budget to blow things up and, dazzle people. So we really focus on the story and, make sure we have a solid story that people are going to enjoy. It's just we try not to make it popcorn if we can help it. So it's kind of a point to every movie we've made so far, I think. So
I like that approach. I like that horror that it's saying something, or the horrific events are, an allegory for something, or anything to give it a deeper meaning than just a slasher to cake somebody in Cara syrup. And
yeah, because that's easy.
Right. Yeah.
Body counts are very easy. So
yeah, the jump scares more than like the more intellectual kind of getting into your mind thing.
Yeah. I love messing.
The nice thing too is what, as Greg says, what he does when he's writing is he won't write anything that he doesn't know how to do, how to make happen. So for some of our other scripts that we're working on, it's like, if there was some technical thing that we need to figure out whether we could do that, then we did the tests to say, okay, do we have the capacity of doing this in-house? Can we do this thing? So before it even gets written, we already know whether we can do it or not. There's no use, writing something if you're not sure that you can pull it off, because then that gets
throw money at it.
Or throw money at it. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, and any problem solvable with enough money, right?
Oh yeah, pretty much.
That's a really good approach. Do you find that sometimes it's a double-edged sword where you really want to put something in, or you think this one thing, whatever it might be, would really move the story forward, but you just don't feasibly see how you can pull it off?
Well, it all comes down to the kind of can we pull it off? Like I've been in the middle of scripts and I'll stop and call somebody to make sure we can get something, do something. And then if they say, my thing is, what's the chance percentage wise? And if it's, above 70, I will write it. And That's kind of the way I approach it. Like, yeah, like I come from the kind of the world that if you're not creating, you're dying. That's just my own thing. Like, I love what I do. And it's instead of waiting around for things to happen, like we've never shot a film, I think, in the predicted order. It's kind of like get a bunch of irons going. And there's always a small one that we can just kind of quickly get into production. Or, in the case of this one, before the lockdown, it didn't even exist. We're working on trying to get Jane, which is another thriller, off the ground. And then the whole lockdown back in March of what was that, 2020 or 2019?
2020. I know it feels like forever, a decade ago.
The first lockdown, when nobody knew it would, and everybody feared this thing. The script didn't exist. And I was kind of starting to feel a little, I don't know, claustrophobic. And I'm a writer. I'm equipped for, solitary confinement. Right? So I don't know how some other people did it. But it was starting to, and I saw this opportunity as well because, I knew the studios had no clue how to make a movie with less than 500 people. And we're used to crews of, 10, 12 people on some of these, so we thought, okay, fine, so it's pretty tight, but we can do it. So I literally called everybody I wanted involved. Gary, I knew I wanted to ride for this. He was in our Kingdom Come, and it was just like, I put it out to everybody and just go, if I write this, is everybody in? Because I knew we were going to have to kind of lock down together and just go for it. So it took about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks to write it. I had an idea. I had the ending, so that's usually all I need. And yeah, and then we just, within 2 weeks after that, we were in production.
2 weeks is a really quick turnaround for a script. That's great.
Yeah.
To kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent, because I'm always curious about people's writing process. Do you find that like this is my scheduled time to write, and I'm going to write for this amount of time, whether it's good or bad, or I have to throw it all the way tomorrow or edit it, whatever it is? Or do you just kind of let it flow when it works, walk away when it doesn't?
Oh, no. I'm not a flow writer. I can't do the wake up, write a couple hours a day. I pretty much have the script in my head, storyboarded, shots, you name it. Usually 80% of it. I got to at least have the beginning and the ending. I need to know where I'm going. If I don't, I'll have a 300-page script. If I start a script and just kind of let it find itself, I can't write that way. Because I find writing a chore. So I get very inside myself and turn into this disgusting wild beast because I just want to power through it, get it done. So yeah, I tell myself I have to write this for everybody else so they'll understand what I'm talking about. That's what gets me through a script.
Okay.
So and it's just like I have notes, and at some point some other scripts will just come to me. I get that ending and I get a chunk of the beginning. That's what I need to start. And until I have that, they're just gonna stay notes in my phone. Maybe alter it every once in a while. But yeah, that's kind of my process, and it's work. Like it's
for sure. That's why it's always interesting because everyone has a different approach, but it works for the end result is that it works for everybody.
And you have to do that. Yeah, you have to do that. Like if you're gonna write, you got to find out what works for you. I know people that like to find the story. I'm just not one of those.
Yeah, and I can see your point where if you're just finding the story, you don't know how long it's going to take to find it, and you're not going to make a 17-hour horror movie. So,
pretty much.
Gary, when do you get involved in the or how deeply do you get involved in the story part of the process?
Well, it's sort of what ends up happening is Greg says, "Hey, I got this script or an idea, basically," and there's normally like by the time he comes to me, it's very fleshed out, and so then I get a chance to kind of read the script, for the first time. And that's always exciting to read a script because you're really, you're not sure. You're going in cold, and it's kind of the first time you'll ever get a chance to see the movie, unadulterated. Like it's your first exposure to the story, and so that's always exciting. So for this particular one, it's like, I'm reading it and I'm going, wow, what's up with this guy? Like, what's he doing now? And then it's like, well, hold it. Who's that? What's she doing? And that's kind of weird, and so you're getting these kind of questions about, what is their motivation? Like what's happening there? So that's always kind of an exciting time to read a script, and just kind of flow with it initially and just kind of like let your mind just kind of flow all over the story, like absorbing all the false leads and just trying to piece it all together. So, and then at that point, then it's like, okay, now start doing some breakdowns of what, technically what we would need to shoot it kind of thing.
Okay.
Because like Gary and there's a handful, like most of my crew, they've all been the same, right, on all these movies. And it's just like another point about the writing process for me is I can't rewrite it right. Or I would just continually change stuff. So I try to keep everybody in the dark as much as I can until I can hand them like a first draft or a second draft or whatever it is. And because they act as my story editors too. I don't understand this isn't working. That allows me just to go because I know where everything is. Like I can tell you page numbers and everything. I'll go, okay. I go right in, I change that, and that's it. It's just so they all act kind of as story editors to a certain degree, and that works best for me because again, if I got to go from start to finish and then get away from it, and then and then it's just like, okay, where's the problem? What's not working? They tell me. I'll agree or disagree, and then I'll go in and fix it. I don't read scripts that I write.
That's really interesting. So when you show your script to, say, Gary, it might be the first pass you did on it?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, and then, we got Caroline that, cleans it up for grammar and spelling. So,
but your first drafts, though, are pretty thought out. It's like just like your first rough cuts of the thing. It's not just a quick slap and dash.
It's all here.
Yeah, it's going to be this, and then this is going to happen, and that. Like, no, it's laid out. Everything is there.
Yeah,
and so any of the bits that need to be changed are just little editing kind of bits as opposed to story structure kind of bits.
Yeah. Yeah, like my first rough cut. I've got temp music in the entire movie. Like it's completely sound effects because I can't edit any other way. I want to because I love music and just what you can convey emotionally with it. So for me, I had no editors that can cut no music. I don't know how, and all the power to them. But it's pretty much almost finished first pass feature, just too long. So
yeah, that's really cool. I love that. You want it to be, it's not the final polish, but you want it to be as close as possible so you get the full experience.
Yeah, that helps because it goes to the composer, right? And then they kind of know what I'm thinking, and and same with the sound designer, Joe, our sound designer. He's got less guesswork as far as effects go. Because, like I said, the movie is in here. If I could figure out a way to put something up against my head and just think it into existence, this process would be so much easier.
That might be coming. So, I just blanked. So you knew who you wanted for the male lead. Did you know Joanna prior to this, or did you do a casting call for that?
No, there's no casting call, but Joanna stuck in my head from another audition we had for, I think we were working on Wrong Girl at one point, and we did some auditions in Toronto, and she came out and read for that. And that was probably about 2 years prior, but she just, I keep them in the back of my head. And when I knew Rye was my man. But she kind of, when I was thinking about the female lead, it was just like, she kind of popped into my head. So here I am, like rifling, trying to find old reels and information on how I can get a hold of her. I ended up having to contact her like on social media because I knew her name, but I couldn't find the box of stuff. And finally, I don't even know what social media platform I got hold of her on. But, after a dozen messages, she called me and we had a conversation. And I said, I think you'd be perfect for this. Rye Barrett's playing the lead. Are you in? And she basically read the script and said, I'm in.
That's awesome. So how different was the shoot because you did it under pretty strict guidelines compared to, say, a year previous if you had done it? I'm sure it was like night and day, but what was like a specific challenge?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I think just the hats everybody had to wear. Like I cooked for everybody for the most part, because our one location fell through because everybody was still very skittish about the whole COVID thing. Mm-hmm. Even though we were going to have small, it was just, everybody was backed up against the wall with this. So I ended up using my place that I live. So, and then it was just kind of like, okay, just to limit contact and just because we knew our biggest thing coming out of this, if we came out of this, we could have, like, if we weren't the first we met, we're probably one of the first that were in, producing a feature at that point. And we knew our best kind of thing was coming out, no one getting sick. So we kind of quarantined together. We wore masks the entire shoot. When I wasn't cooking, we would order in and we'd order pizza or whatever, right? And we'd ask to split them in individual boxes. So we took the whole safety thing very seriously. And yeah, it was just the hats. I think everybody, we had a joke that, everybody kind of had their own alter ego. I can't remember what my cook name was. I think it was Carlos or something, and Joanna and Ryan named their makeup artists. So yeah, so it was just but we had fun with it. I love the intimate, you can just focus on the story so much more.
Yeah. Gary, were you able to be on set with all that, or were you kind of telecommuting in for your bits?
No. In actual fact, so at that time in Ontario, they had a 5-person maximum inside a building. So we had basically Joanna and Rye and Greg, myself, and another collaborator, Mike Down, who is a man of many hats as well. We said, Greg and I say, you know what, if we want to make a movie, first let's see if Mike is available, because he was first AC, first AD, grip, gaffer, I mean, you name it.
This movie would not be if it wasn't for Mike. I don't think we could have done it without Mike. That's how ambidextrous he is.
Yeah, yeah, he's just a machine. But so that was the five of us. But then sound. It's always a problem with sound. What do you do? Anyway, so a great sound guy, Steve Scott, who we needed Steve to do location sound for us, but he that would make six. So Steve had to sit out in his van out in the parking lot. And so he couldn't be in there, and so we adjusted all the boom mics, and the actors put on their own wireless mics, changed the battery packs, did all of that stuff. So Steve was relegated to be outside the whole time. So kind of tough for him to not really be able to be in there.
Oh yeah, sure.
And just kind of see what was going on. But it was kind of interesting because because there was such a small number of us inside and sort of on location, is that there's a real great camaraderie that happens because it's not a big thing. Like if you have a big studio operation, if anything happens, it can derail the whole thing, but it can't stop. It has to move forward at all times. Whereas in a small production, you've got this great ability to say, hey, you know what? It's for the actors. Like, hey, you know what? You guys want to try something different? You want to try a little something extra? You want to do a little bit of this or a bit of that? There's a lot of flexibility there to let everybody, really finesse what they can or what they need to make it good. So that was. It's always a pleasure to have that. Although extra hands are always nice, but
yeah, I'm sure it was a really trying shoot, but just hearing about it, I feel is really inspirational, because if you are someone who's listening and you want to create something, you just got to find a way to do it.
Yeah, you can sit around waiting on things, and I do not. I'm not built for that. Like, so it's I always have this little micro thing kind of sitting. There's a couple more, but it's, there's these bigger ones that I want to do, but it's also dependent on financing, right? So it's just like, and I'm not going to sit around for years waiting for it to happen. I'm hoping, okay, one of these smaller ones will be a catalyst to it. Like Jane, I'd love to be Jane to be the next one. Like, it's my favorite script I've ever written, so, and I wrote a lot. So it's just like, I can't wait to just push ourselves, we kind of, the whole COVID kind of made us go back to the roots, no money, very small crew, but we make it work, we have enough resources at our disposal, like just abilities between all of us, like, and I'm talking all our kind of staple crew, that, half of us could, croak and the movie will be finished. So it's just, and I love that fact. So
yeah, it sounds like you guys, because you've been working together for so long, you've built this thing now that's like, I don't want to use the word machine because that makes it sound like you're just like assembly lining movies, which I know you're not. But you're this kind of like fine-tuned instrument, which it sounds like, which is really awesome and probably what a lot of people strive for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. We're like a really good garage band.
There you go. Yeah.
Like, we support each other, everybody, and it's a calm set, like there's no panic even when things are blowing up. We remain calm and we remain focused, and everybody's out, not trying to protect their own fiefdoms, or, everybody is looking after each other. Everybody is at all times trying to figure out, okay, what's the best thing that we can do? How can we help the actors, do what they need to do? And they are thinking, okay, how do we help the crew do what they need? And everybody is helping each other. And
control chaos. So we
yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I know I've used the word a bunch of times already, but it's really inspirational for people want to create, especially given the last year. I mean, you found a way to make a full-length feature movie and you shot around near impossible circumstances, but at no point in the movie was I was like, oh, that's because of COVID. They had to do this and that. Like, it doesn't come across that way at all.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I try not to look out for that, but if I watch a movie that I'm pretty sure was made in 2020, it's like it's always in the back of my mind.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I try not to let it because it's not the movie's fault. But this one, there was nothing that was like, oh, it's because of COVID. Like it was just your story.
No, we had to come up with, and that was kind of the process to begin with. I'm just going, this is how I'm feeling, and okay, we knew there's gonna be minimal people involved. So I just immediately thought screenwriter. You know, Shining is one of my favorite films, and adaptation, and it's just like, and I always find those fascinating to watch. Because it is such a solitary kind of process. So yeah, no, and I thought that was what would kind of hide the fact that we were forced to have a small cast. We were
Right,
forced
yeah.
to, just pick your topic, I guess.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it's interesting, to see, Rye's interaction on his face, as because you're really following along in his discovery of what's happening, like just to see what's happening behind his eyes. That kind of like you see him thinking. It's fascinating to watch, actually, him just trying to conceive what the hell is going on here, like, and you just see him cycling through internally all the possibilities, and that's really, really exciting to watch.
Yeah, he does have a lot of heavy lifting to do in the movie because he really has to carry the audience along for the ride by himself, a lot of it. So
and we told him that. We reminded him that constantly. Like, you know what? This movie succeeds or fails because of you.
Take that how you will.
No pressure, but
yeah, I knew Ryan could do it from the get-go. I did, like on Kingdom Come, there's a big cast, it was like 8, and we spent a lot of time just doing coverage, on reactions and this and that. And I remember thinking, I underutilized Ryan and can't wait. Something's going to come around that, I really want to work with him on. And this just happened to be it. It's kind of like Joanna. Like, it's just something that happened on that shoot. It sticks with me. And I am not a big fan of working with actors a second time.
Oh, really?
Because they become those characters to me.
Okay, I can see that.
And I have a hard time shaking that. But that's how strongly I felt about, if anybody could pull this off. And like Gary said, it's just magical watching him. Like, I just remember looking at the monitor and I'm saying to myself, I could just stare at him all day. Like the nuance in his, and just without saying anything, like, it was just like, it's just going to be voiceover. And I was fine after I got to the edit. And it's just like, no, it doesn't, because I think, the movie, like we've been calling it a slow burn, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it's almost like 2 movies, but I think the slow burn makes the payoff for the end so much more, just so much more.
I definitely see what you're saying without getting into spoilers, but it is one that you're hanging on to see whatever resolution it might be. And that's when everything kind of hits. Yeah. Gary talked about it a little bit before we hit record. But how has the release been? He mentioned that you almost had a screening, but then the COVID thing kind of flared up again.
Yeah.
And you kind of bypass film festivals because it's a long process. It's kind of what the gist of it that I got out of it was. But how has it been kind of doing like media rounds like this or getting the word out to people?
Oh, it's been absolutely great. Like it's just like the clock's ticking. You feel that like in a week, a little over, tomorrow's a week, I guess. So it's just like, it's always the most stressful time, because this is kind of the period where, you're trying to get enough exposure, to drown out some of the other voices. But it's just like, I wish we would have been released, 2 months ago. But, there's the pipeline that you have to, I think we signed with Gravitas in March, and we're already, June release, because I just knew before the studio stuff, they've been holding back on stars coming out. We have a better chance, of, cutting through that noise So I think that was our number one thing, was just timing. And if we didn't have the lockdown here, like we had in the 11 theater, and we're not giving up on it, we'll see how things go. We're still kind of technically in a lockdown. So it's if we had 11 theater, like just distribution on that we got our own. And it's just like, and honestly, like a small movie like this probably wouldn't in normal times even had that opportunity, because like theaters are hurt too. Like they're clamoring, and if anything new that they can have, a window on, they're clamoring for right now. So yeah, so it was a timing thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I kind of mentioned it to Gary before, but I feel like even though things are starting to kind of creep open, people are still looking for content and looking for fresh and new. They can only rewatch whatever show on Netflix so many times. They want new stuff.
Yeah.
So I think you're still in a good spot for that.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come on to talk to us about the movie. I wish you the best of luck with it. You want to tell everybody where they're going to be able to find it on June 1st, and then maybe where they can find more of your work or your socials or anything else you want to plug?
Gary, why don't you?
Sure. Well, Gravitas is handling our North American release, so we're in all the main cable and satellite, Comcast, Dish, et cetera, Apple, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon. There'll be hard physical copies as well going out, again through Amazon. I think through Walmart, like online. Whatever. So yeah, it'll have a pretty big footprint. So I'm sure if anybody wants to watch it, that they'll be able to find a place.
Awesome.
Yeah, and all our stuff's on our website, matchboxpictures.ca. So I just hope I'm proud of this movie. What we had, and how we did it. It's just, and I think, like I said earlier, the genre thing was always a problem, but in a nutshell, I think at the end of the day, I think I want just people to get the theme that it's kind of about hope, and you can't use that right now.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Gary and Greg one more time for coming on the show to talk to me about Open Your Eyes. As I mentioned, that is available now. You should check it out. It was a really cool movie. It was cool that they found a way to make a movie during peak COVID, but it doesn't feel like they were working around certain parameters. It being a smaller, intimate story is the story. It's the point of the movie. We've got a lot more interviews, a lot more new movie coverage, a lot of things on the schedule coming your way, so make sure you like and subscribe. You're not going to want to miss out. Also, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week, wherever you get your podcasts. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. We love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments, leave us something on social media. And on a more personal note, a good friend and I have an ongoing comic book series out. It's called Social Studies. It's a slice-of-life comedy comic about the high school experience, all the ridiculousness that comes with it, and we cram all that through the prism of the 90s cartoons that we grew up on, and you kind of get this Nicktoons-era sitcom on the page. So check that out at socialstudies.com. We hope you enjoy it. Thanks.